right, here's a blizzard of 2003, and Matt Marino's ready to take off over the deck. Mommy's very nervous about this.
Bye!
Bye.
Woo!
Turn around and wave to me.
Childhood, like in its purest form, is just freedom and having no cares in the world and just sort of walking through life new, having that sense of innocence of there's nothing that's corrupted you yet, and there's nothing that's really come in to like change the way you see the world and experience the way you're living. I was exposed to drugs and alcohol from a pretty young age. I started drinking pretty often at the age of 13, and then by the age of 16, I started experimenting with marijuana. By 17, I was using cocaine daily, just chasing that every day, waking up, getting high, making sure that I wouldn't feel anything I didn't want to feel. It led me to do things that I was not proud of, stealing from family members to fuel the habit, selling drugs to continue to fund whatever the habit was, and it pushed people away and it hurt a lot of people. And the wreckage I was causing from all that only fueled the depression and the anxiety that I was going through because I felt as if I was letting down everybody I cared about the most.
Scene 1, take 3.
Christmas 2003.
Are we recording? Okay, we're recording. Go ahead.
The night before. Whatever.
I remember waking up one morning and I walked downstairs and I looked in the bathroom mirror. I was probably the same height I am now and 115 pounds. And I remember walking to this bridge and looking down and having this thought of, I can't do this anymore, but I am too afraid to die. And I remember in that moment just feeling like at my absolute lowest, and it was probably the most scared I had ever been in my life. When I told my mom what I was going through, I remember she just broke down on the couch and started crying, and all she wanted to do was help. My brother sat me down, he looked at me and he said, "You are going to kill yourself being 1 foot in and 1 foot out of this." And then that's the last time I ever took a drink or did drugs. I remember I was coming up on my 3-year sobriety date, and I had a text message from my dad that said, "You and your brother need to get on the first flight home. They're not expecting your mom to make it through the night." We walked in the hospital room, and I saw my mom. What had happened was she had a urinary tract infection that was blocked by a kidney stone. And the UTI had nowhere to go, so it seeped backwards into her bloodstream. They came in and told us that basically there was a way to save her, but the only way we're going to be able to do that is if we amputate her from the knees and the elbows down.
Oh, Christmas, when all through that, not a key to its strength, not even a mouse.
Thank you. Oh, that's beautiful, Matt.
They were asking the same series of questions over and over again, and they said, "Do you know where you are?" And she would shake her head yes. And they would say, "Do you know what's happening?" And she would shake her head yes. And then they asked, "This is what they want to do. Should we let them do that?" And she shook her head no. And then they said, "Do you know what that means?" And she shook her head yes. And I remember in that moment sitting there and watching this woman who's protected me in my entire life basically greet death with such assurance. And in that moment, it clicked that she believed that wherever she was going next was better than anything we could offer her here. And I remember walking to the other side of her hospital bed and looking down on her that day and saying, "Thank you. And I love you. And I'm okay." And I kissed her on the forehead and I walked out. And that was the last time I ever saw her. So I took a drive up Pacific Coast Highway until I hit this beach that I was familiar with. Just kind of followed the waves until it brought me to like this underground cave that is just dark all the way through, but on the other end, there's a light that's just facing out into the ocean. And I remember just feeling emotionally overwhelmed and getting to the end of it and just looking out and just asking the question of, what am I doing and where am I meant to go? And it was the first time in about 15 years that I prayed and asked for an answer and direction. I sat down and opened my Bible for the first time, trying to understand who Jesus was and who God was, and if that's something that I could believe in. Before I walked into Red Rocks, I wrestled with a ton of fear about acceptance. I assumed I wouldn't be welcomed in due to the tattoos that I had, and that if they knew my past and they knew about my addiction and my stealing and my struggles and just who I was before, they wouldn't want me around. And then I made a promise to myself that no matter what happens or no matter what you feel, you're gonna go next week. I remember we were sitting in the front for Baptism Sunday, hearing all of these stories and seeing all of these people accept Jesus into their life. I remember feeling this overwhelming joy for myself, and it was the first time I had truly felt content since I was a child. And I remember walking out of that service that day and looking up to the sky and just feeling as if my mom was looking back down. And I remember just saying the words, "I did it, and I'm okay, and I love you." And that night, I decided that I was going to be a follower of Jesus. I walked in shame and fear and darkness for close to 17 years. I experienced a lot of life, some good, some bad, and it was heavy. But since accepting Jesus into my life and establishing that relationship and that faith and that connection, I can honestly say this is the most free I have ever felt.